everyone.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to see so many out on our last session, just a few days from Christmas. It's great to have everyone here. This morning we'll be on our topic, which I think is one a lot of people have challenges dealing with. We know we have challenges dealing with patience with others and patience with ourselves, but patience with God. Patience with God. And I know you've only just started the daily reflections because it's only Tuesday. But we'll talk about a few things that I think will be good group discussions, table discussions. We're going to start off with a prayer. And the prayer for today, the opening prayer, comes from St. Teresa of Avila. So you'll probably recognize her, some of you may recognize it. So let us pray. Let nothing upset you. Let nothing frighten you. Everything is changing. God alone is changeless. Patience attains the goal. Who has God lacks nothing. God alone fills every need. Amen. And I'm guessing this is from you, Joyce? Yeah. From today's Forward Day by Day, for Tuesday the 21st. I'm going to read this too. I think it adds into our session. So it's a quote from Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 1. I will stand at my watchpost and station myself on the rampart. I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. I know we tend to complain to God a lot, don't we? And then there's part of the reflection. We don't have a greenhouse or a bounty of extra space to grow seeds for the next planting season. But it doesn't matter. Varieties of tomatoes and sweet peppers, kale and spinach, basil and chives have already started shooting upward. When I feel stuck in my writing, I often stare at the tiny buds, letting myself be reminded of the miracle of seed and soil and water and God. Interesting. Good morning, Sid. I'm just going to flip the board over and we're going to touch on anything from last week that you'd like to still talk about, any reflections, anything that you have. But before we even do that, we're going to have our moment of silence, get ourselves into that positive, reflective moment. So make yourself comfortable, sit however it is that you feel good, back straight helps, hands wherever you feel comfortable. And about 4 times to breathe in slowly, as we've done the last few sessions. So breathe in at a slow, steady rate, hold it for about 3 seconds or so, and then slow out. So you're breathing in God's love, light, healing, and then you're breathing out all those stresses, fears, anxieties, impatience. Okay, so we'll start with the one breathing, and then I'll let you finish the breathing, and then we'll have about a minute or so of silence, and then I'll bring you back. So let's start with the breathing. So breathe in slowly, and hold, and breathe out slowly, and continue maybe 3 more times or so. take a moment or so, when you're ready, open your eyes. Okay. Just wondering, how many here have never really taken time in the past to have some quiet or meditation time, centering prayer, but never done it before? Sue, okay. Anyone else? But this is maybe a first time that you've introduced it into your times of prayer or reflection. Do you find it helpful to do that, to sort of just put aside what's going on outside or in your day, just to kind of create this little moment, you and God, chance to listen, to sit in that silence of God? Okay. Just going to quickly flip this over. So last week, we talked about patience with others, and these were some of the things that you shared. Who would like to share something that came out of the other reflection sessions, the daily sessions that were beyond last Tuesday? Was there something that spoke to you? A comment from one of the daily writers, perhaps? A memory of something that connected with you, or something that came out of our session, something that came out of our discussions at our tables that you would like to talk about, and maybe go a little further. So I'd like to just take a little time and make sure nothing was left behind, because again, being on a Tuesday, there's still several days worth of those daily readings that you go through. Would anyone like to share? Oh, Joyce?
Well, just looking at the things, what it brought to me was I never realized, for instance, when I was in the hospital, that I needed to have patience with the hospital employee when I bring my buzzer and they weren't able to get me.
Patience with the hospital.
Or with the doctor who
Yeah,
wasn't coming in immediately or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That, and I've been there many times, so you need to have patience. You'll be taken care of, you just need to have patience. That's very difficult to think that when you're in pain or something like that.
And it is, yeah, when you're in a situation where you're in a hospital and you are in pain, or you have a need, or you gotta get up to go do something, or whatever it is, it's hard. It's hard. And when we are not well, the focus really is on you, right? It really, really is.
Nobody else exists except you.
That's right. That's right, and it's hard. I mean, and if you have one nurse who's dealing with 10 other people, you know, but still, I need now, or I'm hurting now, and it's hard. It's very hard to deal with. Anything from the, yeah?
On Thursday, it was gentleness, peace, and patience. And
Yes.
what helps your ability to be gentle and patient more often? Age.
Age.
I think I'm more patient now than I was, you know, when I had kids and all that,
Uh-huh.
and was doing more stuff. But then I know older people get really grouchy sometimes, so I don't know. I don't know, maybe
grouchy people.
I'll pass into that phase soon, but right now.
Right now, you're more patient.
Yeah, right now.
So for you, over time and growing older, you gained a little bit more patience, life experience. Okay. So
I
you,
was just going to add that we are retired and we have more time, and maybe it gives us more time to think and be patient.
you have more time being retired and more time to think. Yeah. And then Barbara, and then Bobby.
I think on Thursday also we talked about patience not being just the absence of impatience, but it was more the gentle, loving, and kind persona that you might bring to others or to a situation, but not just not being impatient.
Right,
So there's more to it.
right, thank you.
That
Bobby?
was it. Thursday evidently was a.
Thursday sounds like it was important. Yeah, okay.
Comparing patience with being gentle.
Mm.
And being gentle to me also means being kind. And that just really, really struck. Because you try to be kind.
Mhm.
So
So what do you think of that, patience being associated with kindness and gentleness?
makes sense.
Did you ever think of that before? Have you ever really thought of patience in that way before? I see, Stu, you're shaking your head no. And it's a concept, when you look at it in that way, it lends itself to a whole different way we relate to other people. Well, you know what, let's take just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes at our table discussions and talk about that. And if it is a new concept for you, so how can you maybe incorporate it a little more into your dealings with other people? And maybe with yourself, being a little more gentle and patient with ourselves, going back to that topic. Let's take about 5 minutes.
One of our commentators.
The other thing is that I always remember, especially with my elders, studying with myself, and no one disagrees with wise. Do you know you're catching 101? And I always remember that when dealing with other people who are patient.
Yes, that's what it says at the beginning.
Yeah, we met that. Try to explore.
When I feel impatient, I get real anxious.
Yeah.
I think
And then when you get
Saturday,
anxious,
the question was, what was your big surprise of the week? And I did say that it comes, with that patience comes the byproduct of all those other things. And I kind of think, like a mundane thing like trying to be patient in line at the grocery or something. But in becoming more aware of like focusing on that word, that feeling, that virtue, whatever you want to call it, that, even your demeanor, my demeanor can change, and I can begin to just feel that peace. Well, this is fine, the situation is good, I don't have to be anxious or upset or anything like that. And so it's almost like it's a byproduct of patience comes these other gifts.
Yeah, I swear that every day is a new day when we have to walk the same trail. You have to sniff because somebody's been here. It's like, oh, come on. And I keep trying to tell myself, this is their walk. This is their walk. You can go walk on your own. They can't.
Many years ago to this, and this is about 4 weeks ago. It's still an issue for us. We still haven't got the door. And they've taken the old door out, so
Well, one of mine even goes and barks at the other one, telling them to get in the kitchen. You're missing out here.
You missed a thing on dogs. You went away from
Being patient with our animals.
But it relates to being also relates
to deal with the issue.
The person healthy felt we were relatively calm. And as well, we talked about this, we're not going to get upset.
when I was
These sessions,
9 months.
dealing with this issue.
And they're very ordinary kinds of things, it's not like we're dealing with these difficult situations, we're dealing with the grocery line and the light's not working out right.
It's over.
The person driving in front of us, cutting us off and making an unexpected U-turn, just the very ordinary things.
And the whole scheme of things, it's not a big deal.
I know when
And
I
the
was
thing
carrying
is,
the
when we
food
finally
so many
got
times, I
our
had to remind myself, am I
we
upset
found the
because
door we would like,
me
the
or
original one
is it
would
because
well,
know, she's got so, it would take us an hour and a
You have
half.
another opportunity to practice patience.
Waiting.
Exactly, waiting.
Yeah.
Because it took her 20 minutes to get to the car, it took us 10 minutes to get in the car, it took us another 20 minutes to walk in. And I was really having her do the therapy for me, try to help. So I had to learn patience with myself. Trying to
Yeah, ordering tickets to a show. I mean, that's a process in itself.
And I've dealt with a lot of ill people, but they were patients, they weren't.
Well, another issue, still with the Tories, we've been rather sensitive.
I tried, I studied.
Never.
That's one thing I've learned about myself. I'm not a patient. And it really was.
So it's really been quite a lesson, the class and the door.
I remember being so judgmental of other people. Seeing
Every time I think about
how
patience now, I'm just gonna
snap at each other.
See?
It's like, God forgive me, I'm so sorry I judged somebody else.
I think it was back in one of the earlier lessons that they talked about, well, what you pay attention to grows. And as you pay attention to patients, you do see the different opportunities that we have, and then what the byproducts can be. Then, you know, and maybe like people do notice that you're not all jazzed up about the door, that you're okay, and they comment on that.
Yeah, it's like, exactly.
Yeah, if we got real angry, we probably would. Yeah, I think we did make some progress. With our more laid back.
You know, he walked into the temple and turned all those tables over.
We're going to have to, when we come back for the Lenten class, you're going to have to fill us in on the status.
Some of those stained glass windows are so perfect.
Or have a christening party.
Yeah. Okay.
I've thought about your friend all week.
Okay.
Does he want to come to Christmas dinner?
Let's gather ourselves back together again. I wanted to just point this out. This came out of the discussion from this table, was one of the things that was mentioned, and I thank Bobby for mentioning it. You know, the word patience itself, I mean, the whole study the last 4 weeks has been about patience and impatience. The word patience takes on so many different meanings for people. One comment that was mentioned at the table is it's about, you know, about hurrying up, you know, being patient, wanting something to be done. And so the word patience can be approached in many different ways. But the comment based on the Thursday reading from last week, being kind and gentle has more meaning than just the word patience. When we say you have to have patience with someone, again, it's how do you understand patience? But when you say learning to be kind and gentle with someone is totally different. Being kind and gentle. I'll remember that next time I'm at a vestry meeting. Yeah, I see our junior ward nodding around. Okay. What do you think of that? I mean, so you had time to discuss it in your tables. Any comment on this comment that came from here? And then I'd like to hear from anything that came out of your table discussions. So anything about that? The kind and gentle versus just the word patience. Stu?
I really like that because when I think of patience, sometimes patience, you're making yourself be patient.
You're making yourself be patient, right.
Be patient about it. Being kind and gentle is
A way of life?
yeah, it's a way of life. It's also, I mean, it's the word I wanted. Yeah, exactly. Love is associated with it.
Right.
And it should be natural.
Right. Well, the quote that's used on that day from last Thursday is from Philippians chapter 4, verses 5 to 7, right at the top of the page. That's on page 34. Let your gentleness be known to everyone, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. And another sort of a discussion piece was when you're a caregiver to somebody who maybe is not well, sometimes patience wears thin. And it could, and it can, and it does. But when we remember this part about the kind and gentleness part, it helps us maybe to take a step back, you know, and how we are approaching other people. But then we also need to be kind and gentle with ourselves. That's a part about patience with ourselves, you know, remember that topic? Because sometimes when we realize we've been maybe a little rash or a little harsh with someone because we've lost patience, then what seems to come back at us sometimes is a bit of guilt. It happens. But sometimes we're tired. And if we're in a position where we do care for someone, we also need to be kind and gentle with ourselves and learn that sometimes those moments happen. So it's also, again, about patient and loving ourselves, too. Any other other comments from the table discussions before we move on to our other topic? Good morning, Doris. How about from,
I just thought of something, our son works at Whole Foods. And
Whole Foods, yeah, Whole Foods.
And
Yeah.
he's a college-educated person.
Yeah.
And could work other places, but he feels like he can't for some reason. And he's 30, I said he's 38, but I think he's only 37. But he has people come up to him and yell at him because something's not on the shelf, or why don't you have this, or blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. And he has to, Whole Foods won't let them yell at people, so he's got to be patient. And he's already a really gentle, kind person. So he just has to, like, suck it up and be nice, you know, but go, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have that, or, you know, you can go ask so-and-so, or, you know, find it on aisle 12 or whatever. But it's not right that people treat these grocery store workers so badly and just assume you're just the stupidest person and you can't find a better job, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's just, some people, he just, I don't know, I want him to find a better job, but he won't.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to hold our tongues sometimes when you're in a job, especially like you're mentioning about your son working in a food store like that, and people can be so rude, and you have to really practice patience.
I mean,
For sure.
He practices patience with them too.
Yeah.
Because he has to.
Yeah,
or else he'll get
absolutely.
fired. Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anybody except me ever noticed how patient Down syndrome people are?
Did everyone hear that question? Have you ever noticed how patient those with Down syndrome are?
Yeah, they're loving, they're kind. It seems to just be part of their personality.
That's
I
it.
just thought
Thank you for the observation. Yeah. Sue?
On the first Sunday of Advent, they talk about what goes with patience. Authenticity, truthfulness, integrity, and surrender to God, I guess. I mean, all those things are part of it, are they? Part of patience?
It is, yes. And that's on page, for those who want the reference, it was on the Sunday for the third Sunday of Advent?
Third Sunday of Advent, and it's page 30. It's page 30. Sort
So
of in
page
the middle,
30,
little
for those who
below
want the
the-
reference, if they're taking note of that.
And then second paragraph, second big paragraph, and that's at the end.
And which paragraph was that?
It's the second paragraph and it's sort of towards the end.
Okay,
Now I have to find a way to move forward in relationship with authenticity, truthfulness, integrity,
Yep.
and surrender.
Okay.
Wow.
so for those watching on the video and maybe couldn't hear, it says, now I have to find a way to move forward in relationship with authenticity, truthfulness, integrity, and surrender.
And gentlemen, afterwards it says,
Yes.
so that's something we should be thinking about as we are.
I don't know, maybe I'm not all that bright, but it just occurred to me to look up the definition of patience
Okay.
in the dictionary on my phone, and it said it's the repression of anger, annoyance, and everything else.
Oh, interesting. So the
I never thought of it that way.
so the dictionary says a repression of anger and all the various things.
So it's a conscious,
Yes.
you have to really be conscious
Well,
of being patient.
That's where being the kind and gentle. I think when we repress something, we're never dealing with it.
Well, that kind of
Right.
bugged me. It was like, yeah.
So sometimes we may have to hold back. That's the holding back our tongue, like we just heard Nancy mention about her son probably has to bite his tongue a few times and hold back from lashing out. But if these become more the definition of having patience, it's not so much about repression, which is a negative solution, than a positive solution of learning to be more caring, loving, gentle, have integrity, authenticity, truthfulness. All those things change our perspective on what it means to be patient than just repression. It's like a sort of, putting a leash on a lion. You're not solving the issue. If that lion gets loose, well, but if you could tame the lion and help it be more gentle and caring, it may not be so bad.
What else did it also say?
How about at your table, Edna? Was there anything that you'd like to share from your
Well,
table discussion?
I'm just thinking of adding one word, accepting, or acceptance.
Accepting?
That we
Acceptance?
can accept the situation.
Yeah, that's the other part of the definition.
Oh,
To accept, tolerate, delay, trouble, and suffering without getting angry or upset. Kind of like,
Okay.
it's an active thing.
Yeah.
But you see how definitions, to how you approach a definition, it's the, one side of the coin or the other. If it's only dealing with the negative way of addressing it, you never really get to the root of how you can become more patient.
Yeah, because you can still feel impatient.
Right.
You're just trying not to show it
Right.
versus
Then you're gonna explode.
Grinding your teeth.
Yeah.
Deacon Becky?
Well, I know, with AA, they have a saying, let go, let God, and that kind of gets, leads into what we're talking about today,
Right.
but I think that's so true, if you can just let God take care of it, instead of worrying about it. When we put things in boxes, those boxes eventually open. And I know when I used to deal with people with grief, and they try to put it in a box and put it away, and then 30 years later, they don't understand why they're sobbing about the loss of their father.
Right.
Because something triggered it, and it came up.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important to deal with things on a daily basis as opposed to in the future when
Right.
it's, you
Or
don't
we're
understand.
repressing, like that one definition, because it doesn't solve it, does it? It may hold it back temporarily, but at some point it has to be addressed and dealt with. I want to go to page 35, if you look in your booklet. It's still part of last week's discussion, but it really lends itself to this week. Robin Brent, who many of you met when we were doing the Zoom sessions, she is a friend of mine and also one of the writers of the booklet. she quotes from Teilhard de Chardin at the middle of the page under her topic of trust in the slow work of God. Trust in the slow work of God. She quotes Teilhard, "Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything. To reach the end without delay, we should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new." I want to take a few minutes, and again, we're now entering more into this week's topic of being patient with God. Teilhard, it was like a prayer, and he talks about the challenge of trusting in God's timing. Trusting in God's timing. And the question that Robin asks at the bottom of the page is, what practices do you find helpful in being able to be more patient and to more deeply trust God? So you can see it right at the bottom of the page. She says, what practices, prayer practices, daily practices, whatever it is, do you find helpful in being able to be more patient, to more deeply trust God? So let's take some time to talk about that at our tables. And any situations or things that you can share with each other that might touch on that, please do so.
I think when I went
Deacon Becky mentioned let go, what with this Alcoholics Anonymous. And unity, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the works of the Unity Church, but they put out a daily booklet, daily word, and let go and let go.
I said thank God continuously in all things.
And I think for us, that's what we try to do, is to let go and let go. And doesn't make it easy, but it's helped.
I was on a room before I said, that's one of my prayer points. I can see the birds at the feeder. I have my plants, I can see the mountains, the sunrise, and all of that. In the middle of a paragraph. That's where I've always found how much the presence of God is.
We try to start our day just with quiet time and musical candle and just putting ourselves in the presence of God and using morning prayer.
Put that on.
And we just look at it online.
Where I shout, I also find that I am not
together, but we have some quiet music on, some,
That's interesting.
I know it's in God's
music, I
time.
guess. And it just reminds us that this is the purpose of our day. So it's a way of starting our day. And in my best possible world, I would do all of the hours, and stop at noon. And Robin Brennan also talked about stopping, and when I remember to do that, but I don't really necessarily have that Benedictine rhythm down, even though many years of studying the tradition. But that whole idea of stopping and just remembering. But at least we try to start our day that way.
Maybe that God didn't take her soon.
Until we go to the grocery store.
Or Lowe's.
Or we order a dog.
Patience with God.
Well, we
can do something
And your
similar.
son,
yeah.
he's got his badge. That's what
Start the day, put it in a certain frame of mind.
That reading was from Forward Day by Day. That's one of the things that we look at what it said. Yeah.
They have the little booklets in the church office, but it's also online. Oh, and there's some right over there too. But it's online too, and then there's comments and things.
And the theme today
At this time.
is light. And to make
Enough is enough.
light or positive energy shine forth. And I think that's part of patience, trying to be positive. Patience becomes
In terms of calendar, first day of winter solstice.
Yeah.
So days are gonna get longer
Was it that one guy who was
from here on out.
we are not in control of life? That was for today.
She's telling us who she
I
is.
can't remember the question.
No, and I think you realize it in some situations.
I think the bottom,
You think you have
what is your
control.
response? What kinds of things do you do?
It's out of your
And being able to be more patient. What
Oh,
practices do you find helpful?
Oh, okay.
How about you, Bill? What do you do?
I've seen some of my daughter.
We all have to go through our growing pains. They're practicing.
Well, talking about being angry with God, when my husband died suddenly, and they talk about the stages of grief, and you get angry with God. I never got angry with God. I didn't feel like it was his fault. And, just, it is what it is. So you just have to sort of accept stuff like that. That's kind of how I live.
One of the practices which she talks about tomorrow, the welcome prayer. I've done a whole bunch of study. There's a 40-day book you can get that takes you to the welcoming prayer. The welcoming prayer is lovely. It allows you to feel the feelings, but then
Did any of you go to Wednesday and look at that welcoming prayer?
welcome the pain.
Yeah.
Whatever the emotion is. The last part is,
Anybody?
yeah, I let go.
We went to a whole day workshop on the welcoming prayer.
Let go of the desire to change.
We can dream you can do a whole day workshop. I think that's
And it's a big practice.
everything that comes
Forget
into
about it.
our lives.
Let go.
Yeah, you just welcome it and learn from it.
I realize
Well, and that kind of goes with what Bill just said about repeating.
it's a lot
It's all those
Yeah.
things that stick in your mind.
she talks about it.
I have a thing on my
I did go to
refrigerator that says,
Yeah.
never be afraid to face an unknown future.
And I think that part of it is developing a discipline, and that tends to have a pejorative meaning, a discipline. And, but I think it's like a muscle we have. If we have the muscle of patience, the discipline of patience, and kindness and gentleness will follow. But we almost have to do the work of the patience part. And part of doing the work is repeating things like your morning routine, or you're stopping at different parts of the day to remember what it is that you're doing. But it is part of a discipline.
I know when
and it is
my
work.
dad
It's
died,
not just
when he was very
already done. It's
very athletic.
kumbaya.
He could have walked the horse. He died of a heart attack. And he stroked out. As well.
Okay, let's take just a few more seconds to round it up.
That's a great point. Wonderful.
Takes a lot of work, just to
He didn't just put his sweater on.
come one day.
That's a good point.
Barbara's working on that discipline, and I try to keep her working harder.
Okay, let's look at the question that Robin posed to everybody, and I hope you had a chance to talk a little bit about what she asked. So what practices, what are the things in your life, in your, whether it's daily practices or something you do at some point, that you find helpful in being able to be more patient and to be more, have more trust of God. What do you do? Yeah.
When I do prayers, if I'm praying for, like, Russia to leave us alone, or to the government, or to littler stuff, and then I just end it with, it's up to you, you know better than I do, I don't presume to know what the answer is, just, that's what I'm mentioning, that's what I'm asking, and then just let it go.
So,
Just let it,
so it's
let
how you
God-
pray, the way you pray, and just letting
Yeah.
it go.
yeah,
So.
give it to God and just let Him figure it out, because I'm sure He knows.
Sure.
Let go and let go again.
Let it go.
It helps to be patient too. You
Yeah.
have to wait for God. Well, thanks to Deacon Becky and the last class we had, and the rosary, so now when I go
The
for a
rosary.
walk around the lake, I
Uh-huh.
have a rosary that's just a straight one, and I can do that as I walk around, and then that sort of calms down my head, calms me down, and just keep walking around,
Okay.
and I don't have to think about all this other weird stuff, and I get in a better place than when I
Right.
started to drive over there.
Right. Well, a rosary, Roman Catholic or the Anglican rosary, which is the one that Rena was just talking about, helps you focus. You're going bead by bead, and whether you're praying or whatever it is you're doing as you're going through it, gets you totally off of the other stuff. It allows you to really focus on your prayer, on your thoughts, and bring you into that a bit closer to God at that moment. So that's a practice. That's a specific kind of practice. I know someone had mentioned nature, being out there, and nature allows you to disconnect, doesn't it? Gets you out of your house, out of a building, out of a store, and connects you. And if that's a practice, or if that's something that really touches you in a special way, yeah, that connects you with God. And when we have a sense of God's presence and that beauty of creation, it does bring us closer to God. Anyone else? Rob, Bobby?
When I realize how very blessed I am, how very fortunate I am, it just kind of goes away.
So it's about
Gratitude, I guess.
blessed, gratitude, right? So gratitude, how blessed we are, and gratitude, and again, that brings us closer, connects us with God. Deacon Becky.
One of the practices that I do, and Robin talks about it tomorrow, is the welcoming prayer.
The welcoming prayer,
And
yeah.
that is it's a wonderful practice. And I was telling these folks, there's a book that you can do, like in Advent, because it's 40 days, that talks about the welcoming prayer, and it's a way of accepting what is happening and letting it go, and realizing you can't control what's going on.
The welcoming prayer, can't remember if there was in the...
It's 41.
No, I mean in the book. I'm trying to remember if the beginning of this book had. I know the Lenten one that we did last year had some, talked about the welcoming prayer. If
She talks about it on 41.
yeah, no, I understand that.
Oh, where the book is, you mean?
Yeah, there was some information, there was some other information that I had.
It's from the contemplative outreach.
Right.
Father Keating started. That's
Right.
where you can get the book.
Yeah.
It's the only place you can get the book.
Okay. So tomorrow, when you get to tomorrow, so have patience and hold off till tomorrow. It's hard not to look ahead, I know, it really is. Anything else that you,
Well, I
Carol?
think we should get back to today and look at what the Serenity Prayer is telling us.
Yeah,
the Serenity Prayer.
yeah.
And that is a great prayer.
Yeah.
Serenity prayer.
The serenity.
That's on page 40
Today.
at the top.
Yeah. Any other, Barbara?
Our group talked about using morning prayer as a practice.
Morning prayer, like your own personal devotion.
Your own personal, and it could be the booklet from the Daily Forward Movement people, or the Unity people, or the morning prayer discipline of in the prayer book.
Yeah.
But a way to start the day and to friend the day to get it started.
Okay. Yeah, Julia?
Isn't walking the labyrinth kind of like
Walking the labyrinth.
the road?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Walking the labyrinth. I'm not going to spell it right, so walking the labyrinth, which we have here on our beautiful property. Who here, and I do want to see hands, has ever gone to walk the labyrinth? Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. And if you haven't, put your hands up again. And for those who haven't, talk to someone at your table, maybe after we're done, about the labyrinth. There should be, right at the labyrinth, there's a little information pamphlet. And it's a wonderful way of focusing yourself and connecting with God. I do encourage you to do that. Thank you for mentioning that.
You can just use it for that.
Anything else before we have one more discussion time?
Search.
Meditation. Right. So we'll put it under prayer here, meditation. Meditation, absolutely. Okay.
Father Warren?
Yeah.
We could also add that when you actually choose part of a psalm or a psalm and do reflections on that on Thursday morning, that also can serve.
Oh, thank you, Christy.
Absolutely.
For those of you,
I do it Thursday, but I do it every week.
right.
Yeah.
So every Thursday morning, at some point in the morning, usually I try to do it early, I do a little reflection on a psalm or a part of a psalm. I've been doing that since the beginning of COVID, back in March 2020. And it gets recorded. It's live when I do it on Facebook, but then it's always on St. Francis's YouTube channel. So you can go there and find it. It's usually about 4, 5, 6 minutes long. And now that I have my dog with me, she can't go a week without me. She actually cries at the door if I don't let her out to come join me. So she pops her head up and down through the video. Okay, so the fourth Sunday of Advent, we have our last little bit here, on page 37. And it talks about holy patience. Holy patience. And it takes a portion of Luke 1, verses 43 and 45. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord. I love the intro into that, in the reflection. When you suddenly recognize that your life is about to change, do you ever find yourself saying what Elizabeth says, and why is this happening to me? The why me. Anyone ever ask that question? Yeah. Why me? Why is this happening to me? And Bishop Stephen Charleston, who wrote the reflection for Sunday, said, in many ways, why me is the Advent question. Advent is the season of questions because it is the season of expectations. What will happen? When will it happen? And perhaps most of all, why are we a part of it? So think about that for a second. Why me? And what part do I play in it? Both Elizabeth and Mary had a very special part to play. They were the ones approached. They were the ones who would give birth, that would change the world. Elizabeth giving birth to John, as we know, John the Baptist, or baptizer, and of course Mary, mother of our Lord Jesus. On the next page, page 38, top of page 38, patience is trust lived. Patience is trust lived. When we are uncertain as to why we have either been blessed or challenged, we come to that place where we can only wait upon the Lord. Whether life brings us moments to rejoice, like a baby dancing in the womb, or presents us with challenges we need to adapt to with all our coping skills, we trust that we are never alone on the stage. We are confident that God is with us, so confident we can abide in holy patience. Time itself becomes our expression of faith. We know that even if we do not fully understand the unfolding play of which we are a part, we will. In the meantime, like Elizabeth and Mary, we trust in God with a trust that is as patient with God as God is patient with us. I'd like you to look at that paragraph on page 38, and let it be the final sort of time we have our group discussions. Let's take about 10 minutes. So look at that paragraph and talk about it in your group. What resonates there with you, or what is hard to understand or to live within your own life, as what's been mentioned in that paragraph? So about 10 minutes.
Have been the first time you've
That
done
rest
this.
of his case.
Yeah, because I was 19, came out of a house party.
You always said that.
And one of them wound up like this.
Whatever challenges are ahead of us, we need to trust in God.
I look back at it.
Further, Warren, I think it's a shame we won't be able to discuss the welcoming prayer, because that's the whole thing, isn't it? Welcoming everything that comes to us.
And that's the challenge, welcoming everything.
The Joyce we knew wasn't that happy.
Or we're
We were always in the shadow.
Mary was a calm center of what was to happen, but I'm sure she had her quiet moments of like, what is this going to mean? How's it going to change my life? What's it all about?
Can you help me out?
We go through that. Things happen to us all the time.
I had a dear friend who's, she was an Irish Catholic, and her mother was one who would always go back to the Proverbs, the trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not in your own understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. And she, I mean, that would just come out of her. And so, because she was such a dear friend, I kind of adopted it too. And it sort of sums it up, I think.
mental and emotional sometimes worse because it's.
Even though we don't understand, like going like, okay. But we have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
Just recently, why didn't I ever see anything? I said, well, I did have to watch
I find that someone mentioned about becoming older and being more patient. And I think when you're younger, you want stuff to happen. I think Barbara would attest to the fact that I'm generally not that patient of a person, but I'm a lot better than I used to. And I think we were talking about the other night, I think part of it is that you get older and you retire, you have more time. And because you have more time, it's kind of like time is just, it just goes by. We all know, is it Thursday or Friday? Because we just accept. There's that acceptance thing. That time moves on. And when you think about that in itself, if you get to that point, is patience with God, because it's all going to happen. The doors
Some of
will
it,
be
because
open
you couldn't.
sometime during Lent.
And I didn't know that I was.
But I mean, it's that idea. I mean, I can remember when I was younger. It's like, think about it, if you were younger and you were wanting to buy a new car. And I didn't think about it. I mean, and if I do, it's like, oh, well, you might do that sometime. When I was younger, it was like, get a new car, when can I have it? But and I think because you're working,
But I think
hard
divorce,
charging thing
in a way, is
going,
even
you're
worse
still
than death.
doing that
I mean, you lose your spouse,
now
and
it's
people
like,
expect you to be
it's
sad and crying, taking care of you and stuff. But you get divorced, and it's like, kind of on your own.
Yeah, people don't know what.
Yeah, right.
Because then you're trying to get it.
But that happens when you lose your spouse too. I was shocked that all our very French sort of dropped.
You don't know what it is. They don't know what to do. You're like a physical.
Well, I had two couples though that took me in, like a member of their family, and it was great.
What's going on in the world today? Nice way to handle sort of updates it, does it, with the current situation with people and how they're reacting to what's going on in life right now.
I think that last sentence, as patient, that we trust that as is as patient with God as God is patient with us. And I had read in some little meditation earlier in the season about God being patient with us and waiting. God is just waiting for us to come to Him, to be with Him, to make time for Him, to visit with Him, to sit with Him, to give ourselves to Him, to give it up. And God is waiting patiently. So we're working on patience with ourselves and patience with God. But that notion that God is patiently waiting, when are we going to show up? We're thinking, yeah, God's showing up in Bethlehem on Friday, oh boy. But God, it's like turning it inside out. God is waiting for us.
Meditation
From the doctor.
meditation is an ability in some way to feel good.
Living will said.
It's like God, I'm sure he gets pretty mad at me too when he asks me to look like this, and I'm not
The doctor
Try to communicate.
brought
we mentioned
the whole
the
family in
serenity
and
prayer.
they finally
And the
said,
serenity
what
prayer
we're
is
doing,
very nice.
we're gonna disconnect
It
me.
makes a lot of sense. But
It takes
serenity prayer
somebody
is
not
also what we normally
to leave, and she didn't understand why.
There's the second part of it that I actually like better than the first
So
one.
about 2 more minutes.
Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as He did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it,
Yeah.
trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender to His will,
You know, it's like.
that I may be reasonably happy in His sight, extremely happy with him forever and the next.
They have, and I'm saying,
So there's some words that came up throughout today: surrender, trust,
the body's
acceptance,
done,
peace.
and
Reasonably happy in this life, extremely happy in the next.
Well, we found
the
that,
interesting thing is, in the
when
five
we
people this year,
started out, we thought,
and,
gee whiz, we've learned a lot about limits on our patience.
so you can't.
Well, part of when we talk about waiting
Yeah.
and being patient, I always think about, you may know the British comedy, Waiting for God. You've seen that. I know the rest of you have seen that.
But it's, again, it's that impatience.
Well, it's a PBS thing, but it is
When you finally let go of
hilarious.
that control.
But it's about people in a nursing home. But the characters are marvelous. But anyway, they're waiting for God. A little bit different context.
We're waiting.
But we're all waiting. We're all waiting, right?
We don't have any choice.
So let's see, this is really our last discussion. Before we wrap it up for our 4 weeks. I don't know where the time goes sometimes. It really goes fast. So what came out of your discussions based on that passage or that paragraph on page 38? Maybe one from each table, just a comment. Oh, Julia?
Another comment. I in my prayers, quite a bit with asking God to please keep being patient with us and don't abandon us because we're messed up.
Patience with us and not abandon us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so afraid you're gonna just say, we're too screwed up.
But God is patient with us, and that is hard that is hard to sometimes feel or know, because sometimes we wonder, where is God, right? You know, that's also some of the questions we have in our life, depending on situations and what we're going through. You know, where are you, God? But God is patient with us. We just have to learn to feel God's presence with us. And that's the part that is so important about prayer time, devotions, meditation, those walks outside, whatever it is, to reassure us that God is present with us. And when we can feel God's presence, then we can also know that God is present with us because God is patient with us. Or else God would, or forget you people, But God doesn't do that. God never forgets us. God never forgets us.
It's good news.
It is good news. It is good
Go
news.
away reassured.
Any other comments from the other three tables? Bobby?
Well, I had two crises that were just a couple of years apart. And I had, my faith grew between them.
Okay.
And the second one, I knew that God was with me. And that was all the difference in the world.
So even in moments of why me, perhaps, you still had the sense that God was with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess Mary and Elizabeth, when they were trying to sort out what was going on, like what was happening, what were they going to actually be used for God's purposes, the why questions, they must have had that deep abiding sense that God was with them and God loved them. And obviously God would be patient with them through whatever they were going to experience. But that is a unique gift that you, Bobby, just hold on to faith between the why me or why is this happening, and to actually grow in the faith. So that actually is a gift of God to be able to do that.
And in between those two times, I had explored my faith.
Ah, okay.
And that's why I had.
And you came out stronger at the other
Yeah.
end. Okay. What about your table, Barbara and Jack? Anything from your table you'd like to share?
Well, this part about meditation,
Meditation.
opportunity to communicate with God or feel God by meditating, centering prayer.
Right.
That was already, I think the other table was thinking the same thing, right?
Centering prayer.
Yeah, centering
Yeah.
prayer, yeah.
And the welcoming prayer.
A welcoming
And
prayer.
welcoming prayer. And prayer is really important when you have those moments like those, why me, or what is it all about? That's when you do need to take it to prayer. You might get an answer, you may not get an answer right away, but it's important that how we deal with what's happening in our lives, we take it to God in prayer. I can't remember the hymn, but there's an old gospel hymn that has that. Take it to God in prayer, but I don't remember the name of it offhand. But it's true. And it also slows us down. Sorry, Bobby?
It's what a friend we have in Jesus. Yeah.
Oh, what a friend we have in Jesus. Yes?
Yeah.
And we have a friend in Jesus. Yeah, take it to the Lord. Yeah. And there's some other hymns that I think also have the same thing. That same theme is there. Take it to God in prayer to help us to have a better understanding. And maybe the prayer, now that we've been learning a bit about patience, maybe to help us have patience through whatever we experience. If we come away with anything through from the last 4 weeks, is patience with others, patience with ourselves, patience with God. Yeah. Anything from your table, Stu?
Yes, to the wrong guy.
You're the only guy at the table.
You're the only guy at the table. Okay. Joyce?
I have, in reading this main part of this class, I've realized that, I've realized that I've been watching my son grow with patience.
Yes.
And he's in a difficult situation because his father beat him when he was a kid. And I have 3 children, and he's the only one that will take care of him, which boggles my mind. But, and he had a very good talk with Father Warren, and I have seen him go from being very, very angry and calling me and venting and so on, which he still does sometimes, but I see his patience growing.
I think I agree with you. His patience has been growing.
Yeah,
And
but
so is
his
his compassion,
Yes,
considering what he came through.
yeah.
Yes.
It works, guys, it works.
I do encourage you to continue the next few days, the rest of the daily reflections. Today's, which we don't have time to talk about, I think is one that you can spend some good time on your own. It's patience in the midst of deep change. That's today's reflection. Patience in the midst of deep change. And the serenity prayer, as was already mentioned, for God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. There's a good question at the bottom, or questions at the bottom of the page. I'll leave that for you. That'll be, because that is today's day reflection. If you haven't read it yet, read page 40 and spend some time. And then again, don't forget the next few days. We're almost at the end. It ends on Christmas Day. So there's just a few more days left. Thank you all for being part of this the last 4 weeks. Oh, Sue.
Is there another meeting?
No, this is it.
This is it.
This is it for the 4 weeks, the 4 sessions. There will be Lenten activities and studies coming up. More information on that. Well, let's get through Christmas first. So Merry Christmas to all of you, and all who've been watching online, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And thank you, everyone, for being part of the last few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let us finish off with a prayer. And it's a very short one for today. It's teach me patience beyond work, and beyond patience, bless the Sabbath of thy unresting love, which lights all things and gives rest. Amen. Amen. Thank you.